The sun had not yet risen. The stars still filled the sky. The small mountain village was silent, except for the sound of crickets and the distant call of birds preparing for dawn. Most families were still asleep. But inside one tiny wooden house, a 15-year-old girl quietly opened her eyes. Her name was Sophia Carter. Every morning, before anyone else in the village woke up, Sophia followed the same routine. She folded her blanket, washed her face with cold water collected from a nearby stream, packed 2 old notebooks into a faded blue school bag, wrapped yesterday's leftover bread inside a small cloth. Then she looked toward the only photograph hanging on the wall. It was a picture of her late mother. Sophia smiled softly. It wasn't in the next village. It wasn't even across the river. Her school was nearly 10 miles away. Every single day, she walked the entire distance. No bus, no bicycle, no motorcycle. Just 2 worn-out shoes that had already been stitched together 3 different times. The first mile passed through narrow dirt paths surrounded by tall grass. The second mile crossed a wooden bridge that shook every time someone stepped on it. The third mile climbed steep, rocky hills. Sometimes fog covered everything. Sometimes rain turned the ground into slippery mud. Sometimes the winter wind felt sharp enough to freeze her fingers. Yet Sophia never stopped walking. She had one simple belief. If my dreams are waiting at school, then every step is worth it. As the sun slowly rose, villagers began opening their shops. Many recognized the girl. There goes Sophia again. Poor child. She walks farther than anyone I know. Some admired her. Others simply shook their heads. She'll give up eventually. They were wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, she was gone. Since then, every step toward school felt like walking beside her mother's memory. That promise had become stronger than pain, stronger than exhaustion, stronger than fear. After nearly 3 hours of walking, Sophia finally reached Green Valley High School. Students were arriving in shiny cars. Some came on motorcycles. Others stepped off school buses while laughing with friends. Sophia quietly entered through the front gate. A few students looked at her dusty shoes. One boy whispered loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Looks like she walked through a forest again. Another laughed. Maybe she actually lives in one. Several students burst into laughter. Sophia heard every word. But she didn't answer. Instead, she walked directly to her classroom. She had learned something important long ago. People can laugh at your clothes. They can laugh at your shoes. But they cannot laugh forever if you refuse to quit. The next morning, before the first rays of sunlight touched the mountains, Sophia Carter was already awake. The rain had stopped, but the roads were worse than ever. The muddy path outside her home looked almost impossible to cross. Daniel watched his daughter tie the laces of her worn-out shoes. They had dried beside the fireplace overnight, but the leather was beginning to crack. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few folded bills. It wasn't much. It was all he had left after buying seeds for the farm. "Take this," he said quietly. "Maybe you can buy lunch today." Sophia gently pushed his hand back. "You need it more than I do." Daniel looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I wish I could give you everything." Sophia smiled warmly. "You already have. You taught me never to quit." She hugged her father and began the long journey once again. What Sophia didn't know was that someone was watching. A silver pickup truck remained parked near the edge of the village. Inside sat an elderly man with gray hair and thoughtful eyes. His name was Mr. Benjamin Hayes. He owned one of the largest publishing companies in the region. The previous evening, he had witnessed Sophia climbing into the river to rescue her soaked books. That image had stayed with him all night. Today,
the principal smiled immediately. If every student were like Sophia, my job would be easy. Mrs. Williams was invited into the office. She spoke with pride. In 5 years, she has never missed a single day. Not because life is easy, but because she refuses to surrender. Mr. Hayes remained silent. Does she receive any financial assistance? The principal lowered his eyes. We've tried, but there are hundreds of students in need. Our budget simply isn't enough. Mr. Hayes nodded slowly. I understand. Before leaving, he quietly asked for one more thing. Please don't tell her I came. I want to help, but I don't want gratitude. I want her future. Days passed. Sophia continued living exactly as before. Every morning, 10 miles. Every afternoon, 10 miles home. Homework, household chores, helping her father in the fields. Then studying until midnight. Exhaustion became part of her daily life. But giving up never entered her mind. One Friday morning, the weather turned dangerously hot. The school hallway remained silent. Students stared at the results board in disbelief. At the very top, one name stood above everyone else. Sophia Carter. For a few moments, Sophia couldn't move. She read her name again and again, almost afraid it might disappear. Mrs. Williams walked over and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. I knew you could do it. Sophia smiled through tears. This isn't just my victory. It's my mother's. The hallway filled with applause. Even many students who had once laughed. I came here because I met someone extraordinary. He paused. Not because she is rich, not because she is famous, but because she reminded me what determination truly looks like. The hall became completely silent. He looked directly at Sophia. Would Sophia Carter please come to the stage? Sophia looked around in confusion. Mrs. Williams nodded with a smile. Go. With nervous steps, Sophia walked toward the stage. Mr. Hayes turned toward the audience. A few weeks ago, I watched this young girl climb into a flooded river to save her school books. Yesterday, I learned she walks nearly 10 miles to school every single day. And today, she proved that hard work is stronger than any obstacle. He reached into his jacket and removed a sealed envelope. I have only one request. He handed it to Sophia. Please open it. Her hands trembled. Inside was a scholarship certificate. It covered every year of high school still remaining and a full university scholarship after graduation. Books, uniforms, transportation, living expenses, everything. Sophia stared at the letter. She couldn't speak. Tears rolled down her face. He had worried he could never give his daughter the future she deserved. Now, someone else believed in her dream too. Life slowly began to change. For the first time, Sophia no longer had to walk 10 miles every day. A school transportation pass was arranged for her. She finally had new shoes, a proper school bag, fresh notebooks. But one thing never changed.
her attitude. She still arrived before everyone else. She still helped classmates with homework. She still stayed after school to clean the classroom whenever help was needed. Mrs. Williams smiled one afternoon. "You've changed everything around you." Sophia shook her head. "No. Kindness changes people. I'm only passing it on." Years passed. Sophia graduated as the top student in the district. Her story spread across newspapers and television. People called her the girl who never missed school. Soon afterward, she entered one of the country's finest universities. Studying was still difficult. She worked part-time in the evenings. She studied late into the night. But compared to walking 10 miles every day, nothing seemed impossible anymore. 4 years later, graduation day arrived. Thousands of families filled the university auditorium. Daniel sat proudly in the front row. His hair had turned almost completely gray. Beside him, an empty chair remained. Sophia quietly placed a single white rose on it.
Excuses build walls. Determination builds bridges. Success doesn't belong to the person with the easiest path. It belongs to the one who keeps moving forward, no matter how long the journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring moral stories. Your support helps us bring you a new life-changing story every week. We hope to see you next time.